Limitless. He joined for the very first AI hardware hack we did in, I think it was September 2022 or 2023. I felt so bad because it was 1 week before multimodal models came out. So you had all these people using text-based LLMs, hacking the crap out of it to get it on device. Jer's team he hacked a headset where it was like you had that secret operator from James Bond answering any questions. Sounds obvious right now because we have multimodal. Was crazy back then because people were like, LLMs shouldn't be on hardware. It's like, well, we can do some interesting things. Since then, he built out the AI hardware pendant at Limitless. He was a head of hardware doing everything from moving as quickly as possible, getting that shipped. It's a beautiful device. But more importantly, in the last 90 days, he's flew across the world to do a build in public 90-day challenge to launch his new hardware product. So he has some really fun stories from that. So excited to welcome you, Jer. We've got 8 to 10 minutes. He's going to give a talk. We've got time for QA afterwards. So as Jer is talking, we're going to use the chat to queue up questions, and we'll see where that goes. Welcome, Jer. Take the floor away.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. It's an honor to be back here. And as Michael noted, I was president of the first AI hardware hack where I met the Limitless team, and within 2 weeks had joined them full-time as their head of hardware. And within only a year after that, we had shipped the Limitless pendant. So it was a very rapid time from concept to market. And that was just super inspiring. So it's great meeting all of you. I'm so glad you're all here for the 30-day global hardware challenge. Like, it's having personally just come off of a self-imposed 90-day hardware challenge. I can tell you it's absolutely awesome. The time constraint, like that time boxing of your activity, I think is really great in hardware because it forces you to build fast, fail fast, and ultimately you come out the other side of it with something that's much better than you could have ever expected. So just kudos to all of you for being here and stepping up to the plate. I have a few slides I've prepared because I'll help illustrate a bit of what we're talking about here. Let's see, is my screen coming through there?
Yep, we can see it.
Great. Cool. So I'll give you a bit of background on me, and then we'll talk about the challenge I just went through, and then take some questions. So MIT grad, I've won some awards for products I've designed in the past. I've got some pictures here of some of those products. If any of you guys are coffee lovers, you might recognize the Ode Brew Grinder or perhaps this Blue Bottle Dripper. If you're an AI enthusiast, you probably recognize the Limitless pendant. And I also built UV lights during COVID. Up here is for a company called R0, where we did upper room UV fixtures that actually did stop the spread of COVID. That's a whole other story. That was very exciting. So just a little bit on me. And I actually did the math the other day, if you add up the total market value of all the products I've designed and shipped over the years, it's over $100 million in revenue has been generated from products that I've shipped. It's very exciting. So Michael mentioned I just completed what I called the 90-day hardware challenge. So this was just an idea I came up with, honestly. When I was working at Limitless, it had become really clear to me that there existed this incredible opportunity to move even faster with hardware and to do it this intersection of social media and build in public and getting insights from customers. And I was just very inspired by this concept of this build in public process, time boxing the whole thing, and then shipping a product at the end of it. Coming into this, we had no idea what we wanted to build. All we knew was those things I just mentioned. So I teamed up with one of my MIT classmates, Nick. We flew all the way to Bali, Indonesia. We thought, hey, it's a great place to get inspired and come up with an idea. And we stayed in a hotel for content creators. So we immersed ourselves with that community and actually essentially not only made friends, but sort of like some. So user study every single day, chatting with people about what their problems were as travelers and as content creators. And along the way, we met this guy right here, LeBlanc, who is a popular YouTuber. He's got 2.5 million followers on YouTube. And the three of us started working together on our new product. The idea came up to say, hey, let's make it easier to film yourself with your iPhone. This is something that Christian knew very deeply running a school for content creators. He knew that people are doing a lot of content with their iPhones and that it's hard to yourself with the back camera. You can't see yourself in the camera. You don't have a stand on your phone. And that's what we decided to make. So we called it Solo. Over the next 90 days, just our first couple weeks in Bali during that brainstorming session, then I flew back to Hong Kong, where I actually live full time now, and led the prototyping efforts to go through all these iterations and actually refine through that concept to now we have a finished product that's teed and ready to go. Truth be told, we lost about a month at the end there due to just incorporation and all the paperwork associated with getting our business up and running. So that was a big lesson. Just sometimes the side of things can take longer than you expect. But three of us, we were just cooking on our various verticals, built these incredible launch videos that I can't wait to share with you guys. I've built this incredible product, and that's all coming out very soon. So to pull this into what you guys have coming up, I wanted to share a few prototyping lessons I learned along the way. So I've been through, I don't have them, I wish I had them all here on my desk with me. I mean, I could go pull out my bag of prototypes, but I have built countless prototypes over the last 90 days. And there are a few themes that stood out to me that I thought might be useful for you guys as you go into your 30-day challenge. My sort of insight was prototype from first principles. Everything that you see on Twitter is like not just that you see on Twitter, but just in general, I think a lot of startup mindset is go fast spaghetti at the wall, wait and see what sticks. And the more shots on goal you take, the better. And while it's definitely useful to take more shots on goal, you should try to hit the goal. And it might seem like a self-evident thing to say, but it's actually very easy to forget, especially when we're working in the world of 3D, just everything you can, like sort of ad nauseum. It's easy to kind of what you're really doing with your prototype. And that's why I say prototype from first principles. And I actually have an example right here. This was the very first CNC prototype I made, where I knew I wanted to make this stand that could unfold and my phone would magnet to it. And I had a bunch of like really elements to it. The legs are the way they should be. The phone magnetizes into place. But the first principle that I overlooked was actually the one of friction, looking at these hinges that I put in here. And knew that if I was tensioning, basically I knew the way I was tensioning the screw into this could loosen as I actually used the device. And I knew that was a risk going into this prototype, but I was trying to move really fast and I released it anyway, received the prototype a week later from the vendor, and lo and behold, yeah, that does loosen when you use the prototype. And I felt like I actually lost like a couple weeks there and a little bit of money, kind of all these iterations, doing things that I sort of deep down knew wouldn't really work from a first principles perspective. But I was like, whatever, I'm going to move fast and loose anyway, and like, let's see. And it turned out that mindset, especially when I was going into a more time-consuming prototype, like building a CNC aluminum, ended up being a little bit more costly in terms of time. So what I ended up doing from that was I went back to that first principles gate. I'm now tensioning everything properly in this next prototype here so I can build friction in the appropriate way. And once I had something functional working, I moved to a more sort of design. And this is still not our final product. The final product's going to be revealed roughly next week when we launch, but that actually has taken us all the way to what's going to be the final thing. So prototype from first principles. Also inherent in the story I just told is balancing design time with build time. So when you're at the very early stage and you're 3D printing a bunch of stuff, maybe you're actually vibe coding and there's very low consequence to trying something out, go for it, like throw the wall. But the deeper you get into that hardware session, the longer it can take to build each prototype. Maybe you've got your 3D print is a 1 hour print, but as you get deeper into your process, you're doing 2 hour or longer hour prints. You're maybe using a specialized process. Those prototypes that take longer to build and have higher cost, spend more time designing them. And then the last one here is assumptions kill. So you come up with a new idea, you assume it's going to work. Always test your assumptions. I have more examples of this all day, but I'm gonna, in the interest of time, as you're prototyping, be very aware what you've assumed will work. Ask yourself, is that assumption critical to the function of the thing I'm building? And if it is, do a quick test and make sure you've sorted it out before you go off to build your prototype. I'm gonna share one more slide here on build in public because I really want to get you guys excited about building in public. I'm not a Twitter guy. I was not an X guy before getting into this. I was not a social media guy. I was honestly just this nerdy MIT engineer who didn't really know how to pose in front of a camera. It was very awkward. And but I could really see the value of building public. And now my co-founder is the famous YouTuber, and we are all over the internet. And I got to say, build in public is about more than just trying to sell a product. I believe building in public is actually about building a better product. And you can build better products when you're getting this constant real-time feedback from your actual customers. So I shared here some screenshots of just feedbacks we've gotten along the way. People asking questions about what we're building, coming up with ideas for it. Here's some clips from the YouTube channel of like the vlogs we posted. This is awesome product feedback. Down in the corner here is a friend of mine who came across the vlog, saw them, and thought, hey, this is awesome. He gave me just something really nice to me. I got to wake up to this nice text message, and it got me more inspired to just work harder and build more. And then in the upper right here, this is actually the factory owner we're working with. And down in the lower left is him watching himself on a vlog. And it was like a funny moment where it might be the very first time a factory owner has seen himself in a vlog about the design process as it's happening in real time with the quoting and everything ongoing. It was a pretty surreal experience. So anyway, Public can do all kinds of product insights, help from other people. It's an incredibly powerful tool, and take it from me as somebody who honestly has been a big social media guy until recently. Like, consistency, everything. Just get out there and do it. Many of your posts, not gonna lie, they're gonna suck. Like, not as in like they're negative in some way. They'll just be boring. Like the stuff you post, maybe it's not that exciting. Don't wait until you've got the exciting thing to share. Just share as you go. Let the algorithms figure out what's exciting. They'll promote it for you. So anyways, that's a quick summary of what I've been up to the last 90 days. And I'm going to pause right there and see if there's any questions.
Appreciate that, especially that last part of building in public, which I think is counterintuitive in hardware. People treat like what they're building as super sensitive. And in an age where you can take a photo of any component that you tear down, I don't know what the mode is in terms of building into there. Now is actually more opportunity cost in not sharing that to get your early customers, build that initial success. And that's something we've seen in SF Hardware Meetup is almost every single team demoing each month. There's a huge game experimenting of what that build in public looks like. So appreciate that, those learnings. Yeah, we'll do some questions now. So going to combine Nikhil and Nick's first question. Can you share a little bit more about your background, EE or industrial design? And based off of that, how do you think about building teams? And I think we'd love to hear a little bit on the Limitless side, because you guys actually did some fractional work and different things. And the intention behind this question is we got a lot of people here who are just starting their first 30 days. How much do you do individually? And at what point do you start like working with others or delegating? So yeah, tell us a little bit about your background and how you think about early team formation.
This is a fantastic question. I'm really glad. Sorry, what's this question?
This combined them. So Nikhil asked about team building and Nick asked about your background, and that's a good pairing.
Yeah, Nick and Nikhil, thank you. Fantastic question. So my background is mechanical engineering. So I do mechanical engineering in terms of like specific set. I CAD, design parts, design prototypes, 3D print, rapid prototyping. I can release parts for mass production, approve tooling, run production lines, scale production facilities, things like that. Everything in like the realm is something that I have very direct experience with. I'm not an electrical engineer. I don't write firmware. I quite frankly do very little coding at all. I can mess around with Arduinos, ESP32, kind of like that, but nothing that you could really take to mass production. And I'm also not an industrial designer. I don't have that incredible artistic skill set that people do. So in terms of like when to bring these people in, this was a huge lesson that we had during the last 90 days I just did, was we waited. I bring in an industrial designer, this incredible guy I'd worked with in the past. I brought him in about 2 weeks later than I really should have. I brought him in around week 8. It was somewhere between week 8 and it was roughly week 8. And a 12-week, it's roughly 12 weeks. So that was like past the 50% point, which didn't give him very much time to like get done and get us to the point where we needed to get to really pushing past like nice product into now production ready product. So what did I know to bring him in? It's like, clue that I had was starting to stall. Like this was a big benefit to every day, was like my ID from like my post. So like, oh, actually it's stalling here. And it's like very out in the open. Like everyone should be seeing stuff moving forward. And I had a couple of weeks where that wasn't happening. And it was actually Christian, my co-founder, was like, hey man, you gotta bring a designer in here. Like this looks like he was nice. He said it looked like a aborted Cybertruck or something like that. But that's kicked me in gear and I brought him in. So the lesson there is
that's a compliment. For other people, not so much.
Yeah, I would say Cybertruck's cool, but I guess the lesson is be very mindful of the progress that you're making. Don't be afraid to bring in help. And especially when you're working in a time box challenge, ask for help earlier than you think, because it takes time to helping.
That's awesome. Great. And really appreciate that specific story too, because I imagine everyone's going to start breaking onto skill sets and features that just are going to be new. And that's the challenge, figuring out how do you get that done or how do you work through that yourself. Next one in from Old Man Maker. When you consider a first production run, what is batch size and what's the strategy around that? Is it pre-order or do you do a fixed run?
This is a great question as well. So the first production run, well, when you think about production, I mean, linked to how many are you ordering, right? So you're going to place a purchase order for units, and however many are in that, that's what you're towards. How much should your first purchase order be? Simply put, it's however many you think you're going to sell within an amount of time that supports your other business objectives. Now, within our 90-day challenge, I had originally wanted to be actually shipping the physical product within 90 days. And one big lesson we had was like, you can only, like if your goal is to make money, you should have sales pre-orders before you place your first purchase order. Because if you haven't sold anything, then you should figure out why that is before you're starting to like build a lot of inventory. Now, in terms of like how big your first production run be, it should be big enough to validate what you're doing. Like if these smaller projects, like if you're doing 1,000 units to 10,000 units, like that's an awesome success. Like you're selling at $100 a pop, like that's money for a lot of people. In ways, your production builds could be a few dozen units, just whatever it takes to validate the production line.
Super helpful. And there was actually a startup hack a couple weeks ago in SF. The goal was to make as much traction as possible in pre-sales. And the team that won made a little like cute Tamagotchi where like there's like AI, this huge black box. It's really weird kind of talking to voice agents. But if everything is really like cute on your desk, you could create that kind of companion-like relationship. They sold $2 within the first 24 hours. And so being able to get those pre-sales can help you then figure out what that batch is, but also to your point, validate that there's actually like in the market for it, either solving a real pain point or for consumers, who knows what that behavior is like if you're actually putting money down for a pre-order. In terms of next question, how do you think about tightening up the iteration loop? So as you're designing, as you're thinking about getting to that shippable product, I think there's some questions around, Aditya asked about like balancing versus rewards in terms of verification and validation data. Krishiv wants to know like what are some learnings that you had in terms of you're now doing like probably one of the fastest loops you've ever done. So share a little bit more around like how do you tighten that feedback loop?
Well, the feedback loop is it's not a static thing, right? Like there's things you're learning at different points in that product design process, and there's like the way hardware goes that can be a little sort of counterintuitive is it is fundamentally a fairly waterfall thing, in that when you start, you've got this very wide spectrum of possibility that your product could be, your features could be, your customers could be, and the design process is whittling that down into what ultimately becomes like a good that you can hold in your hand. And by the time you get to the physical good, it's like that world of what this thing could potentially be has now been compressed down to a finite physical thing. So this is like I'm not a software engineer, but from what I've heard from my software friends, like quite than software where like it's very malleable and you're kind of always like you could add this thing or the other thing or react to this, that, or the other way. It's like really what we're doing with hardware, and there's a reason for that. It's like the laws of physics require you to like be atoms into like a good and then moving them around the world, and they take up physical space. And there's a certain amount of like when you're doing manufacturing, just like pre-work you need to do to efficiencies. And so once you have all of this like train, if you start changing things, it's hard to steer that ship at that point. So you want to be pretty sure you're pointing it in the right direction before you get that up and running. Now, in terms of, sorry, the question was how do you iterate?
Yep.
So in the context of like, okay, doing in the hardware design process is essentially getting the train running towards eventually a finished good and a customer. In that beginning stage, you've got all of this possibility out there, and you want to be creating like thousands of tiny tests. And the most amazing prototypes that you can do in that like really ideation stage, it's like cardboard, duct tape, like really 3D prints that you didn't spend a lot of time designing. Like the minimum viable thing you could possibly do to your assumption. This is where you stick your lean startup hat on and say, my success as a startup is my ability to come up with a theory. My hypothesis is customer will want to buy this thing. Like the out of your lean startup tests are usually, am I driving towards like a people pay for or not? And you're becoming a scientist saying, okay, I have a hypothesis that I think people want to pay for a cell phone stand. Okay, how do I test that? And how do I test that as quickly as I possibly can in in the highest fidelity answer that I possibly can. And there's a bunch of ways we can do it. Like one thing I did when I was in Bali was I 3D printed these like really looking stands that sort of worked and like got the basic idea out there and could see people start to interact with them. And in the world of hardware, like watching the physical tactile interactions lets you read so many things that are incredibly valuable. I could see, obviously people physically did with it, like where do they stick their phones? Like, you know, actually found really interesting product functions. Like one person was like a videographer and he's like, oh, if I flip this side out like this, I can turn it into like a cam. We're like, oh, cool. Like that's a feature we didn't anticipate. We can see people's like emotions. That's like a big one, like reading, like, do their eyes light up? Like, are they authentically excited? Like that's the thing you get with the physical prototype. But, you know, during that super early stage, or perhaps not obviously, you know, you're doing sketches, you want to be doing renderings, you want to get into chat GPT and these like AI tools are really, really this ultra early ideation stage where you can like sort of vibe design. I mean, now they're kind of generic stuff, but there's always like these tidbits of like, oh, I like that texture, I like that color, I like this general idea. And if you can get to the point where like you've got renderings that like more or less communicate what you're thinking, you can then take steps like running meta ads, you know, and paying $100 for various ads and seeing what converts better. So these are like early tests. The deeper down you get and like closer to that final product, the more specific these things become. They become more like, I don't know if you saw my last slide, but like we went to like our group of, we have like 800 WhatsApp group that give us feedback on the product. And we sent them a picture and my previous prototype was like full like this. And from the next version, I wanted to cut out this hole. And like our team was having this discussion, like, do we want to show the Apple logo or not? And we got it for about 30 seconds and we're like, what the heck are we doing? Ask the customer. And so we just went straight to our WhatsApp group. But you know, you don't have to have a WhatsApp group. You can do this on Twitter. You can do this wherever and just ask people like, what do you think? Do you like it like that or not? And we had 85% of people say, yes, show the Apple logo on the product. We're like, well, there you go. Problem solved. So yeah, some of my thoughts there.
Awesome. Really appreciate that, especially bringing the customer into the decision where build in public isn't about selling or marketing. It's actually about having a conversation, getting data points that you wouldn't have if you didn't have that lead in where people wanted to root for you, follow your journey, and then be in a WhatsApp group where they're actually making decisions with you. So really appreciate that. Last question we end on from Lee. Following your journey on YouTube, previous design engineer at Apple for the leather wallet. Talk about hardware for a little bit. What are some concerns you have about the rear display battery, the wireless wired tether UX, and BOM costs, and how are you starting to address some of these things?
Well, for watching the videos, that's like it's to meet you. And the question was about BOM cost, wireless, and connectivity question.
Yep. Yeah, it's not clear if the rear display module has a battery, if it's going to be wireless or wired, like they're wired, and what user experiences in the context of like doing the fast video shooting using the rear, I guess. And then, you know, it seems to be a consumer product, but it's getting pretty high up in complexity. So worried about how like if the BOM cost is in like the $40 range, is this now like a $150 product or something?
Awesome question. I'm because so I worked at Apple back in the day. I was on the iPad PD team back in 2011. And I raised in the Church of Apple of make everything perfect. And you're gonna hate how I'm doing this.
Like, oh, I added you on LinkedIn too, by the way. So
oh, thank you. I'll go accept. So I realized I wasn't designing just one product. I was actually designing two products, both a stand and a screen. And so for the screen, this is like a very like lean thing, but I didn't actually design the screen at all. I instead got on Alibaba and I found everyone in the world who designs AirPlay screens. That in your pocket. At the time I was doing this back in like April and May, there were only about 4 actual factories that did that. Despite there being like dozens and dozens of brands proliferated, I found that these factories actually run like multiple. And I went and I actually physically visited every factory and I found the one that I really liked, and that's the factory owner that you saw. And worked with them and said, okay, like you guys, I mean, software perfect? No. Is it good enough? Yes. It does work. It's a way to answer your question. So it is Wi-Fi, it's wireless, it is battery powered. We're getting roughly 1.5 hours battery life out of it. And it's a bit of a run and gun right now where we have adapted that core tech that they already had in-house. We created some specifications to fit our product. So we did create our own industrial design, so it doesn't look like a factory design anymore. It does actually have a really awesome, sleek aesthetic. And conducting a little bit more reliability testing just to make sure we're not like totally on mark on it. But Otherwise, it's the guts are the same as other products that are currently being shipped.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jer. We're at time. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for answering all the questions that came up. Really appreciate you sharing your perspective. And as you go live next week, we'll definitely share it in the group too, so we can keep following your journey.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to see what you all build. Kudos for being here and like putting it out there and signing up for a challenge. And I follow every single one of you on whichever social platforms you're so I hope we make that an easy thing to do.
We'll aggregate the build in public so you get the updates, and you're invited back if you want to come back for a feedback session. I'll send you more info afterwards if you want to come back. So thanks so much.
Please leave my info, and if you guys have any other questions come up, like I'm an open book. I'm here to help.
Awesome.